Ground Zero Mosque being financed by the majority owner of Fox News. Oh, you didn't know that Rupert Murdoch is not the majority owner? He has a special deal where he controls it. Saudi Arabian interests own Fox News. 15 of the 19 hijackers reportedly came from there, if you believe the 9/11 fable. But we'll be talking more about that, the oil spill, and a lot more. But let's go to Blaine in Texas, then Dwayne and others. Blaine, you're on the air. Thanks for holding.
Hey, Alex, thanks for taking my call. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, basically just to answer your question about why people accept the lies, I think people accept them because it's easier for them because they don't know how much damage has been done. You know, I mean, when you find out you've been deceived about something.
No, that's it.
You know,
they don't want the responsibility. They like being spectators. They like going through life feeling like they have no responsibility, but it's fun to have responsibility. You're meant to be involved. You're meant to fight for liberty. If you don't, you will be a slave.
Right, right. And, you know, it's basically like what you said earlier. I was thinking the same thing. You know, if you could condense what the federal government is, if you could condense them into one person, it would be, and if you were to trust them, it would be totally unmerited trust. So why do people trust government when they don't deserve it, you know? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. But the reason I called, I wanted to point out an article to you. It's on LouRockwell.com. It was written yesterday. It's called The Myth of the Engineered Recession. It's by Gary North. And can I read just like 4 or 5 sentences from it?
Sure.
Okay, it says, it begins with, there's a lot of myths out there, but of all the recent financial myths that afflict the conservative movement, this one is the most preposterous. Quote, the bankers engineered the 2008 financial crisis. And I was really surprised to see this on Lou Rockwell, and I read through it, and it's interesting. But
really, we have their internal emails. We know they sold the derivatives. Right. We know this is how the IMF and World Bank brought down third world countries. We know we have their 2002 documents where they were calling for it.
Right, and that's the thing. I was really surprised.
Well, really, for a decade, I said they'd use the derivatives to bring down the globe's currencies and then set up a world government backed by carbon taxes, and exactly what I said has now happened. Not because I have a crystal ball, but because I'm reading their own documents.
Right, and like at the end of the article, it says, like in the conclusion, it says the insiders did not engineer the economic crisis except insofar as they have used central banking to further their advancement beginning in 1914 in the U.S. Central banking inevitably produces financial crises. Central bankers try to avoid crises by inflating, then stabilizing, then inflating, and in doing so, they create crises. The teaching of Mises. One intervention leads to the next. The insiders engineered the crisis of 2008 by building the flawed machine in 1914. They are now trapped. So are we. The money machine will break. The political order will change when the money machine breaks.
Oh, yeah, it's real flawed. They're getting total power, and when their system breaks by design, they offer us the new global SDR. I mean, I'm sorry. I have the IMF World Bank documents from 2002. I've been saying since then exactly what was going to happen, and it's happened. Well, what's your view on this?
Well, I mean, it's obviously designed to break. I mean, that's the whole thing. I mean, but like you said, I mean, they decide when it breaks, really.
Well, they're getting the money and the power. They're not getting in trouble. They have set up the system where they have their regulators in all the positions of power so they could consciously, I mean, go back 3 years ago to the emails that are now public. Just one group of them that happened to make public, disclosure. The Timberwolf emails from Goldman Sachs where they said this stuff is absolute SH-you-know-what-T. And they said, but we're going to sell it and then destroy our competition when they buy it, and then we'll make money on the bailout. I mean, we know, see, so many people cannot get in their heads how diabolical these globalists are. But I have their own admissions. I know they engineered it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, I think that's another thing why people accept it. They simply can't. They can't accept that people would actually not have their interest.
Just like when the neighbors go, he was such a nice man, but he had 15 dead kids buried in his basement. Look, Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, the former head of the Treasury, Wall Street Journal editor, has been on my show many times the last 5 years. It's only in the last 6 months he looks at all the evidence and says, they did this by design, they're doing this by design. Because he sees their policies. They want to make it as bad as possible. They tried to bring down the euro 2 months ago. Great points, Blaine. Other calls straight ahead, back in 60 seconds. Infowars.com. Well, many have said I'm the hardest working man in radio, and there's no doubt, because I also make documentary films. We have the 2 biggest alternative news media websites, Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com. And we couldn't have done any of it without you. And we've got a good chance of beating the globalists if we continue to reach out to our fellow men and women and educate them about the nature of the New World Order and what the globalists are trying to establish. Now, coming up after I take some more calls, I want to get into the attempt to take over the internet, the Verizon-Google deal, and other ways Homeland Security and cybersecurity are openly stating they want to end freedom on the web as you know it and put FCC regulations over it. I want to get into the whole flu season coming up and the way they're pushing the same H1N1 shot that caused so many serious bad health reactions. I also want to talk about what's happening with the Gulf oil spill and the cover-up of the fact that 70% of the oil spill is not cleaned up. That's a new lie they put out a month ago that's now been exposed, and that there's ruptures all over the sea floor and that it's still leaking. Major news like St. Petersburg Times, Associated Press are reporting this, talking to scientists who are out there, but it's not a big nightly news item on CNN and Fox. And so now, because they can't deal with this crisis, they're just going to tell the public everything is fine and the seafood's healthy and there's no health problems from the oil or core exit. You know, all the same stuff they did with the Exxon Valdez. The average lifespan is 51 years from that disaster, which was much smaller, where core exit and other dispersants were used. So that is all coming up here in my key news stacks today. But let's go back to your calls. And for those who just joined us, I've thrown out the question, how many lies is enough from government? 100, 1,000, 10,000, a million? They lie more often than not. How do you know they're lying? Their lips are moving. Why do people put up with it? Are they going to put up with it? What do you think the biggest lies are? We're taking your phone calls. And then I'm also going to get back into the situation being reported on by AP, Yahoo News, and Raw Story has the best boil down of it, linked up on Infowars.com. Fox News co-owner, funded Ground Zero Mosque Imam report. Again, Fox News co-owner, funded Ground Zero Mosque. And this isn't some small owner. He's the biggest owner. And I remember this deal about 5 years ago because he was already a big owner, and then Rupert Murdoch still was the biggest owner, and they had to get a government waiver to allow a foreign member of royalty from a foreign nation to own media here in the U.S., and they got the waiver by this prince signing a waiver that he doesn't have decision-making involved with Fox. And that Rupert Murdoch and his son and his wife would have it. And I'm not here bashing Arabs or Muslims. I don't want to have new wars. But seriously, Saudi Arabia is out of control. And it oppresses its people. And it controls so much of our debt, bought so many of our bonds. It owns... Well, I saw a report a few years ago in the Financial Times of London that the majority of world stock markets, the actual markets themselves, not the stocks, but the stock exchanges are owned by Saudi Arabian and other Middle Eastern interests. And why aren't you hearing about this? I mean, if you're against the mosque, and I'm not against it. I don't like it. I think it's distasteful because people have said it's making them angry, and they've got a lot of other property they could pick. But I do believe in property rights. And so if you take their right to build this away, you lose your property rights and your First Amendment, your religious rights. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. But you just can't take their rights. If you take their free speech, if you take their property rights away, you lose it. But this is a big issue, having the #1 donor being the #1 percentage owner in News Corp, the owner of Fox. Okay. Let's go to your phone calls. Dwayne in Georgia, you're on the air. Thanks for holding.
Hey, Alex. Thanks for taking my my call. It's the second time I've got a chance to talk to the honorable, very honorable Alex Jones, and you are absolutely the most powerful and hardest working man in radio, no question about it, and a legend to me. No,
I'm just doing my duty, but God bless you, sir. My listeners and my crew are the legend. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, Alex, you and your team are doing a really great job, and we're very proud of you out here in the state of Georgia. And I got a team out here myself that's really helped me out a lot. With put a lot of money into it, burning your DVDs and getting them out. And if you don't mind, with your permission, I'd like to say thank you to a couple of very good friends of mine that mean very much to me.
Sure, go ahead.
Thanks a lot, Rick, for your hard work and your help, and Scotty and Bill Lunsford. These guys have really contributed their money and their time to help get the message out. And just thanks from your buddy Dwayne. Anyway, your question at the top, at the beginning of the show there, what was the biggest scam that we think has ever been pulled on the American people? And I think no doubt it was the Federal Reserve back in 1913. The second one, I think, was JFK. And, of course, the third one, I think the next biggest one would obviously be 9/11. Is the info war working? Absolutely. Alex, I can't hardly go anywhere. I drive a truck for a living. I can't hardly go anywhere. Well, I was at an AT&T store the other day getting my phone thing straightened out. And I run into two people in there that do about you. And her husband's an info warrior. He burns DVDs. So, yeah, the message is working. And sometimes we get discouraged, but y'all keep your chins up and keep pushing forward. Keep burning them DVDs and spreading the message. And don't give a damn what anybody thinks about what you tell them. If they don't want to listen, move on. That's what we do, and it's working well for us.
Exactly. If our ancestors could die on Bunker Hill to defend the basic liberties we enjoy that produced all this wealth and everything we've got, who cares if a neighbor thinks you're a kook? Who cares if your pastor thinks you're a nut? Who cares if your boss laughs at you? But here's the deal. They laughed at us 10 years ago, but because we warned them, now they've seen it all come true. They're not calling us kooks anymore. I walked in a grocery store today and literally was mobbed. I went in a gas station, was mobbed. Then I went in another store to buy an auto part, and literally there were 5 guys that worked there, all listeners but one, and then they had some people buying stuff at the auto parts place, and they were all fans. Then I went in another place doing errands, and they were all listeners. And again, the last domino to fall, we've discredited the globalists, the world government's out in the open, people know the Federal Reserve's private, now the polls are over 80% want to audit or abolish it. But the last domino to fall is that we still feel like we're the minority. Over 90% of Americans in major polls know the government killed Kennedy. Again, people know the truth now, and they don't buy the lies, but they still feel like they're all alone. So many times I'll be talking to neighbors, especially if a new neighbor moves in and my kids are playing out in the cul-de-sac or whatever, and I'll say, well, I'm a radio talk show host, and, some people might think it was, conspiracy, and they go, it's not conspiracy, Alex. I've been a listener for 5 years. It's just like, it's almost like Fight Club or something with Tyler Durden. Wherever he goes, everybody's already in on it, and he doesn't even know that everybody knows what's happening. But it's insane. And the responsibility of it, Dwayne, really shakes me at my core, but a lot of responsibilities off my shoulders because the word's out there now and the fires of liberty have been ignited, they've spread, and there's no putting them out. Now, it's a tough road we've got to go down here, but folks need to know we have turned the corner. And Ron Paul and many other people who've been doing this longer than I have, I've talked to them on air and off air, and they agree that this is inexorable. Many people, like G. Edward Griffin, he agrees that the momentum has now shifted, but people have to understand we're not going to beat this overnight, Dwayne. It's that pounding. It's that every inch we step, every move we make, everything we do, just inexorably, it's a thing of will. We have to take action and have the truth and not care what people say and just keep coming, and nothing can stop us. God bless you. I really appreciate your call. It buoyed my heart, my soul. What did the founder of the Texas Rangers say? Incredible, guy, hero, tough guy, took on 20, 30 people at a time sometimes. He said, somebody in the wrong can't stand up against somebody who's in the right who keeps on a-coming. You just got to keep on a-coming, and nothing can stop you when you got truth and justice on your side.